They towed the van of a disabled ex-police officer. Big mistake, because what the HOA didn't know was that she still had every badge, every contact, and every ounce of fight left in her. This is a story of how a quiet couple moved into their dream home, only to become the targets of a power-hungry HOA president. But they didn't back down. They fought back, with the law on their side and the truth on their heels. The doorbell rang just as I was helping Sarah transfer from her wheelchair to the couch. We had only lived in Sycamore Ridge for 3 days. "Can you get that?" Sarah asked, adjusting her leg braces. She'd lost partial mobility after a police chase went wrong during her 15-year career as a K-9 officer. But even now, no one could tell her what she couldn't do. Not without a fight. I opened the door to find a perfectly polished woman with frosted blonde hair and a tight smile. Behind her stood 2 men in matching polos, looking more like bodyguards and neighbors. "Welcome to Sycamore Ridge," she said. "I'm Eleanor Matthews, president of the Homeowners Association. We're here to deliver your welcome packet and collect your first month's dues." I raised an eyebrow. "That's strange. Our realtor said this home is exempt from the HOA. It's in the closing paperwork." Her smile vanished. "There must be some mistake. Every home in this community is part of the association. It's mandatory." "Not according to our documents," I replied. "This property was developed before the HOA was even formed. We're grandfathered in." Her eyes narrowed. "We'll need to review those so-called documents. Bring them to the board meeting, Wednesday at 7 p.m. She shoved a thick folder into my hands. "In the meantime, here are the community rules. That ramp by your side door, it has to go. It doesn't meet aesthetic standards." My jaw tightened. "That ramp is for my wife. She's disabled." "Rules are rules," she said with a shrug. "You can apply for a variance, but the committee only meets quarterly. Next one's in August." From behind me, Sarah called out, "Who is it, Jake?" "Just the HOA," I replied, forcing calm into my voice. Eleanor leaned to peek past me, catching sight of Sarah. Something flickered in her eyes, not compassion, calculation. "Your situation doesn't exempt you from our standards," she said coldly. "We pride ourselves on uniformity here." As I tried to close the door, Eleanor stuck her foot in the frame. "One more thing. Your wife's van with the service dog stickers? It needs to be parked inside. No commercial vehicles allowed overnight." "It's not commercial," I said. "It's wheelchair accessible. That decal shows she was a police officer." Eleanor stepped back. "The rules apply to everyone, Mr. Reynolds. Wednesday. Don't be late." The first strike. I closed the door, my hand shaking with anger. "She says we're under the HOA," I told Sarah, "and she wants your ramp gone." Sarah flipped through the handbook. 56 pages? Maximum grass height? No flags except on approved holidays? This is absurd. She paused. "And my van? Because of the K-9 decal." "That's not even legal. The ADA protects these things." That evening, we reviewed every document. And yes, our home was explicitly excluded from the HOA. It had been built a decade before Sycamore Ridge even had a name. But the next day, things escalated. Retaliation begins. At lunch, I got a call from Sarah. "They booted my van. Jake." "What? Who did?" "Your friend Eleanor. She called a tow company. I can't go to therapy." I raced home to find Sarah, furious, blocking a tow truck from taking her van. Eleanor stood smugly on her porch, watching. "This is illegal." Sarah shouted, "You can't tow a vehicle from private property." The driver shrugged. "I've got authorization right here, signed by the HOA president. This property isn't part of the HOA." I said firmly, "You have zero jurisdiction." Eleanor crossed the street, arms folded. "Consider this your warning. Next time, the van's impounded." Sarah's eyes narrowed. What they didn't know was that she'd once tackled armed suspects in dark alleys. She wasn't going to be intimidated by clipboard warriors. She stepped forward, voice low and steady. "Remove the boot now, or I call my old precinct, and you'll have 5 patrol cars here investigating attempted theft." "She's bluffing," Eleanor scoffed. Sarah calmly held up a phone, revealing her badge as her lock screen. Try me. 15 minutes later, the boot was gone, and a uniformed officer, Sarah's old rookie partner, showed up just to check on things. Eleanor stormed back to her house, but the war had officially begun. The pushback. That night, I installed security cameras around the property. Sarah called a legal contact who specialized in housing discrimination. We were preparing to fight. By morning, it was clear Eleanor had rallied her allies. Neighbors blocked our driveway accidentally. Anonymous complaints were filed about our ramp. Someone even triggered a city inspection over our sprinkler schedule. They are trying to wear us down, Sarah said. But this isn't just about rules. Eleanor wants control, and I think she's getting kickbacks. That tow truck came way too fast. We spent that night digging into Eleanor's background. Turns out, this wasn't her first time using HOA power like a private army. 3 complaints in other communities, all vanished. And she owned a rental home out of town, with the same towing company parked in the driveway. She's built herself a little empire, Sarah said. And now, we're a threat. Cliffhanger end 2. Wednesday was approaching. But before the meeting, one more blow hit us hard. I came home to find our driveway empty. Sarah's van, gone. Panic rose in my throat as I called her again and again. No answer. Finally, a strange number called. Jake, it's me. Sarah, where are you? They towed the van again, while I was in physical therapy. I'm at the impound lot. They want $450 to release it. I was already grabbing my keys. They said the HOA authorized it again, this time for a commercial violation. Jake, this is war. I'm on my way, I said, already sprinting back to my car. Just hang tight. As I drove toward the impound lot, the fury built in my chest. This wasn't a misunderstanding or some power-hungry HOA posturing anymore. This was a direct attack on Sarah's independence. Eleanor had crossed a line she should never have touched, and she was about to find out what happens when you push the wrong family too far. The impound lot looked like a prison. Chain-link fences topped with barbed wire, a rusting sign swaying in the breeze. Sarah sat outside the office in her wheelchair, her jaw tight, her eyes flashing. She tried to smile when she saw me, but it didn't reach her eyes. I've been sitting here for 2 hours, she said. I told them it's a mobility vehicle. They don't care. I dropped to a knee beside her. We'll pay it for now. Then we hit back. Legally. She handed me a form, the one authorizing the tow. Signed, of course, by Eleanor Matthews. The violation, commercial vehicle signage. All because of a K-9 support decal honoring Sarah's service. Inside, the office clerk barely looked up. $150 to release. Extra $50 after 24 hours. Casual card. This is a mobility van for disabled officer, I said through gritted teeth. Federal law protects this. Take it up with the HOA, he muttered. I paid. Furious. When we finally got to Sarah's van, we found a long, fresh scratch along the wheelchair ramp. Sarah stared at it silently, her kind of silence. The same cold quiet her colleagues used to call the calm before she made someone very sorry. Take pictures, she said. All of it. This lot, the form, the damage. We're building a case. On the drive home, Sarah was already on the offensive. First a lawyer friend, then a call to a few retired colleagues, and finally, Melissa, it's Sarah Reynolds. You still want that story on housing discrimination against first responders? I've got one you won't believe. By the time we pulled into our driveway, Sarah had secured a news crew for the next HOA meeting. But we weren't the only ones preparing for battle. Lining our property were dozens of tiny American flags. What the... I muttered. From across the street, our neighbor Frank waved from his porch. Heard what happened. Thought you should know. Those flags mark the original property lines. Your house? Never part of the HOA. I've lived here 30 years. Sarah smiled, her first real one all day. Thank you, Frank. Been waiting for someone to stand up to that woman, he said. Most folks are too scared. She got the Gonzalez family kicked out over a food truck. Nobody talks about it. Inside, We suited up for war. Sarah put on her formal police dress uniform, pinned her medals, slid a photo of her with her K-9 partner Max into her wheel chain pouch. Psychological warfare, she said with a wink. If she wants to shame us, she should know exactly who she's dealing with. The HOA meeting was held at the community clubhouse. One small ramp, hidden in the back. As we wheeled up, Sarah snapped a photo. ADA violation. Strike one. Inside, 30 or so neighbors sat facing Eleanor and her board members. As a sign-in sheet circulated, Sarah casually took a picture before signing. Eleanor didn't look up. Non-compliant homeowners have 2 minutes to present their case. Board decisions are final. She finally noticed us as we entered, and paused, her eyes narrowing at Sarah's full police dress uniform. Whispers filled the room. That's Officer Reynolds. Before Eleanor could speak again, a voice echoed from the back. I believe they are right on time. Captain Rodriguez entered, full uniform, flanked by 2 officers and a woman with press badge. Eleanor paled. This is a private meeting. No press allowed. The reporter, Melissa, smiled sweetly. Public meeting, public space. Governance decisions make it subject to open meeting laws. We're well within our rights. Sarah rolled to the center aisle. We're here to resolve 3 issues. First, the illegal towing of my ADA-compliant vehicle. Second, harassment based on our property, which is legally exempt from this HOA. Third, your ongoing pattern of targeted enforcement. I don't see any documentation of exemption, Eleanor muttered. I stepped forward and laid it all out. Original deed, property survey, title insurance noting HOA exclusion, and one final paper. A cease and desist letter. ADA violations. I added. Captain Rodriguez stepped up beside me. We're also looking into possible kickbacks between the board and Rapid Recovery Towing. Multiple residents have submitted complaints. Gasps! Then, they towed my son's car over a college sticker. Said it counted as an ad. I got fined for a basketball hoop. Said it was 6 inches too tall. Bang! Eleanor slammed her gavel. These are not on tonight's agenda. I move that they be added, said Judith, a board member who had been silent until now. And I move we review the towing contract, specifically the section that funds landscaping for Eleanor's vacation home. Eleanor's face turned to ash. Judith, how dare you? I've reviewed the accounts, Judith said calmly. Payments to Matthews Landscape Design. Registered at your son's address. Silence. Sarah rolled forward. I think we've found the real issue here. And it's not my K-9 decal. The reporter's camera clicked, perfectly capturing Eleanor's frozen face as Captain Rodriguez stepped in. Mrs. Matthews, we'd like you to come down to the station for a few questions about possible misuse of HOA funds. As Eleanor was escorted out, still insisting it was all a misunderstanding, the rest of the room sat stunned. But Sarah, she just adjusted her medals and waited, because this war wasn't over. Not yet. The remaining board members didn't waste time. One by one, they voted to officially recognize our property's HOA exemption, fully refund the towing fees, and launch a full audit of all HOA finances. Outside, the mood had shifted. Neighbors who once avoided eye contact now approached Sarah, sharing their own horror stories, late-night threats, silent fines, bogus rules. Frank returned, this time with a bottle of wine. You've changed everything, he said, eyes gleaming. People were too scared to speak up. You gave us a voice. Sarah nodded, thoughtful. This isn't about burning the whole thing down. HOAs serve a purpose when they are run honestly. The problem was never the system. It was a corruption. You thinking what I think you're thinking? I asked, catching that familiar spark in her eyes. I might run for the board, she said with a half smile. Somebody needs to make sure this never happens again. As we drove home, Sarah's phone rang. It was Melissa from the news station. This story's catching fire, she said. I've had 3 other HOAs in the county reach out. Same kind of abuse. With your law enforcement background, how do you feel about being consultant for a larger investigation? Sarah raised an eyebrow at me. I gave her a grin. Sounds like retirement just got a lot more interesting. I'm in, Sarah told Melissa. On one condition, we focus on solutions, not just headlines. She hung up and turned to look out the window at the quiet neighborhood below. You know what this means, right? She said softly. That Eleanor picked the wrong person to mess with. Sarah laughed. Yes, and that we better be ready. There are people out there who'll need help. Good thing I married a fighter, I said, reaching for her hand. Good thing I married someone who knows when to pay the towing fee and when to call for backup. Later that week, 8:03 a.m., sirens broke the morning stillness. I stood in our living room, watching as 2 police cruisers rolled to a stop right in front of Eleanor's picture-perfect Tudor home. Sarah sat calmly in her wheelchair, phone in hand, a knowing smile on her face. They're here, she said. Mr. Jenkins from next door dropped his garden hose. Others peeked out from porches and windows. Phones came out. Whispers spread like wildfire. From the first cruiser, Officer Thompson stepped out, her posture sharp, a German Shepherd partner ranger trotting at her side. From the second came Captain Rodriguez and 2 other officers. All business. Right on cue, Eleanor burst through her front door in a silk robe, coffee mug in hand, horror plastered across her face. What is going on here? She shouted. I couldn't help but snap a photo. After months of her taking pictures of our violations, it was poetic. Officer Thompson approached. Mrs. Eleanor Walters, we received multiple reports of illegal activity involving the Pine Haven Gardens HOA. Illegal activity? Eleanor scoffed, her voice shrill. What kind? Financial irregularities, intimidation, and potential fraud, Thompson replied smoothly. We're requesting full access to the HOA financial records. Eleanor pointed across the street. At us, they put you up to this. This is revenge over a parking dispute. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. These reports came from several sources. We can do this here, or you can come with us. Eleanor's face twisted in rage. Fine, but this is harassment. I'll be filing a complaint. The officers entered her house. Neighbors watched in silence, a crowd beginning to form on the sidewalks. Mrs. Patel hurried over to us. What's going on? She whispered. Sarah smiled calmly. Just some questions about HOA management. You know Eleanor raised the Jews 3 times in 2 years, right? For the new landscaping and security system, Mrs. Patel nodded. Have you seen either one? Mrs. Patel paused, and her eyes widened. 4 to 5 minutes later, more officers arrived. Eleanor was let out, not in cuffs, but clearly under investigation. Captain Rodriguez carried out boxes of records. Officer Thompson found a safe in the garage, hidden behind gardening tools. You did this. Eleanor shouted across the lawn. You're not even real members. You'll regret this. Sarah rolled to the end of our driveway. Actually, Eleanor, thanks to you, they found what they needed. If you hadn't illegally towed my van, nobody would have looked at your books. The crowd grew. Phones rolled. And then Martin Cooper, the HOA vice president, pulled up looking like he hadn't slept in days. Captain Rodriguez pulled him aside. Their conversation was long and left Martin pale as a ghost. That afternoon, he knocked on our door, holding a thick folder, his hands visibly shaking. I had no idea, he said quietly. She kept fake records. Real ones were separate. She's been skimming almost 30% of our dues. Sarah arched an eyebrow. That quite the side hustle. There's more, Martin added. The towing company, owned by her brother-in-law. They've been targeting non-members, splitting the fees. I felt my fist clench. How many families? 12, maybe more. Most gave up and just joined the HOA to avoid trouble. Sarah leaned forward, calm but intense. And now? We're holding emergency elections tonight. Eleanor's been officially removed, and the police want statements from anyone she targeted. We'll be there, Sarah said simply. The fight had started with a decal on a van. But now, it was about justice, dignity, and something much bigger than just one neighborhood. The real cleanup had just begun. After Martin left, Sarah rolled over to the kitchen table, determination burning in her eyes. She popped open her laptop and started typing furiously. "This isn't over," she muttered. "What are you doing now?" I asked. Rodriguez gave me the list, every family that's had their car towed. "I'm emailing them all," she said, her voice steely. Eleanor thought she could intimidate a disabled woman. She picked the wrong one. That evening, just as we were getting ready for the emergency HOA meeting, our doorbell rang. On the other side stood a news reporter, MIC in hand, cameraman in tow. "Mrs. Sarah Mitchell," she began, "would like to talk to you about the breaking fraud case in Pine Haven Gardens." Sarah gave a confident smile that could have lit up the whole block. "Of course. Would you like to come in?" By the time we arrived at the community center, the place was packed wall to wall. Families who'd never once shown up to an HOA meeting were crowding into the hall. A news van parked out front captured the buzz. As Sarah wheeled through the doors, a hush fell. Then one person started clapping. Within moments, the entire room erupted into applause. Martin banged his gavel. First order of business, an apology to Sarah and James Mitchell. Second, an immediate reimbursement of all towing fees. A man in the back stood. "I move that we also vote to make HOA membership truly voluntary, just like the law says it should be." Cheers broke out across the room. I squeezed Sarah's hand. This was only the beginning. 3 weeks passed. The rain tapped gently against the windows as I poured Sarah a cup of tea. "The court date's set for next month," she said, scrolling through a tablet. "The prosecutor wants me to testify about the towing incident. Are you ready?" She looked up and nodded firmly. "More than ready." The emergency election had made Martin president, with Mrs. Patel as treasurer and Mr. Jenkins as secretary. Their first act? Making HOA membership optional. For real this time. "They want me to head a new committee," Sarah said, trying to sound casual, but I could hear the pride in her voice. "Accessibility and community relations." She did a playful spin in her wheelchair. Funny how they suddenly care about ramps and handrails. Just then, the doorbell rang again. It was Mrs. Patel, holding a large cake. "For both of you," she said, handing it over. "The least I could do. I should have spoken up years ago." We invited her in for tea. She looked around with quiet admiration. "Your home so lovely. Not at all like when the Thompsons lived here." "You knew the Thompsons?" Sarah asked, wheeling in. "Oh, yes. Eleanor threatened to sue them over their fence height. They moved, just like 3 other families before them." Mrs. Patel shared years' worth of stories. Selective rule enforcement, constant surveillance, HOA funds being funneled into Eleanor's personal pet projects. That security system. Only her house and the community center were covered. That night, the community center looked completely transformed. Wheelchair ramps, accessible bathrooms, and for the first time, a warm, open energy. Martin called the meeting to order. "I'd like to welcome everyone, members and non-members. This is your neighborhood." Applause. "And I'm pleased to announce the county prosecutor has officially filed charges against Eleanor Walters for fraud, embezzlement, and misuse of HOA funds." More cheers. "And now, I'd like to introduce our newest committee chair, Sarah Mitchell." As Sarah wheeled up front, the crowd rose in a standing ovation. I felt something swell in my chest as she took the MIC. When we moved here, we thought we found our forever home. Then we learned what living under Eleanor's HOA meant. People nodded solemnly. But that's behind us now. We have the chance to create the kind of community we all deserve. She paused, then added, "My first proposal is to use the $75,000 recovered from Eleanor's fraud to build accessible playgrounds for all children." The vote? Unanimous. After the meeting, Captain Rodriguez pulled us aside. "Thought you should know," he said quietly. "We found out Eleanor was pulling this same scam in 3 other neighborhoods." "A serial HOA scammer," Sarah said, stunned. "Exactly. She moves in, takes control, siphons funds, sells a house, and disappears. But thanks to you, we've got our eyes open now." The next morning, Sarah was already dressed. "Going somewhere?" I asked. "We both are," she replied. "The prosecutor's executing a search warrant on Eleanor's vacation home, bought with HOA funds." We drove to the courthouse where Sarah gave her official statement. The prosecutor, sharp and efficient, nodded with approval. Most victims don't keep records as detailed, she said. 15 years in law enforcement teaches you a few things, Sarah replied with a grin. Outside, we found a small group waiting by our car, families who'd also been targeted. Thank you, said a man in a wheelchair. None of us had the strength to fight. But you gave us courage. The real change happens now, Sarah said, shaking hands. Together. 6 months later, we hosted a neighborhood barbecue. Kids played on the brand-new playground, now outfitted with ramps and accessible swings. Eleanor, she pleaded guilty and was serving 18 months in county jail. As I flipped burgers, I watched Sarah showing the kids how her service dog, Max, could retrieve items on command. They were fascinated. Martin handed me a cold drink. This neighborhood's never felt more united, he said. Sometimes it takes someone trying to control everything to remind us what real community means, I replied. And sometimes, Martin added, raising his glass, it takes someone brave enough to say no. We clinked drinks as laughter and music filled the air. For the first time since we'd moved in, Pine Haven Gardens finally felt like home.